Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. BrightWord is a leading platform for diverse storytelling, where voices from all backgrounds can share their unique narratives and connect with readers from around the world. Follow our regular podcast updates, where we strive to foster a literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the BrightWord Books Podcast. We're joined once again by Ruth Leedy Carr, author of the Polar Hole: Light in Europe's Clouds. Ruth studied journalism and psychology at Indiana's University and has written 8 books on polar hole shifting. 2 of her Floria Benton titles were republished actually by Sagan Press, and she's been recognized by the UFO researcher William L. Moore as the foremost proponent of the hollow earth theory. Today, we will go deeper into the new revelations in her latest book, from retouched photos of Mars to hidden clues left by Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan, revealing what may be the biggest cover-up in planetary science. Ruth, hi.
Hello.
How have you been doing? How's life?
Oh, well as can be expected for somebody who's almost 80.
Well, I mean, for someone who's almost 80 and you're still doing the kind of work that you're doing and writing and everything, I mean, that puts you in a very, very small percentage of people who are actually very, very active at that age. And so respect to you in that regard.
Well, I'm almost 79, actually.
Okay, well, my respect is all the same. So I want to start by asking you this. Since your first appearance on this podcast, Polar Hole has gained more attention. How has the public or the academic reaction surprised you so far?
I'm not aware of what the reactions are yet, because I'm really not tuned into the internet. I was never taught that in school, and I just have been too busy with this project to take the time out and the money out to become internet savvy. So I don't know what people are saying. I can imagine what they're saying.
What can you imagine? What would you think?
Well, I can imagine they're saying that I should stick to music or something.
You do music?
I was a church organist and a piano teacher.
That's lovely. Well, maybe do both. There's no it's not a mutually exclusive thing. You can be a musician and you can continue your writings. But what inspired the expansion of your research to include now Europe's clouds in the title?
Well, my original source was the book Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet by Jess Stern, and in there, well, there was a geologist who endorsed a great deal of what Cayce had said. So it wasn't just me believing prophecies. But anyway, one of the prophecies was that the upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye. And based on that, as well as some of the other prophecies which could point to the formation of a new equatorial bulge, say near Japan, I deduced that the prophecy about Northern Europe really referred to the formation of a polar hole. Also, there was a prophecy that his light, or the Christ light, as it's been interpreted, will be seen again in the clouds around the same date, which it was said that it would happen around the year 2000. But the main point I got out of it was that the date for the appearance of the light in the clouds was going to be about the same as the date for the polar shift. And
right.
And so I pardon?
Yeah, please
so
continue.
I began to read. I attempted to verify what the prophecies were saying by reading various geology books science books of all kinds to find out whether I could support what the prophecies were saying. But I found it exciting that the prophecies of Christ basically were being applied to Earth science instead of just referring to the appearance of a man in the clouds. It appeared that the prophecy was referring to the appearance of the Earth's internal sun shining through a new polar hole up into the clouds where people could see it. In other words, that would be a real catastrophe if that happened in one's neighborhood.
Right, I can imagine. And so, what would you say distinguishes Polar Hole, the book, Lights in Europe's Clouds, from your earlier work? Would you say you have new evidence, you have a new focus, maybe a reinterpretation?
Oh, the main thing that's different is that beginning in 2010 or so, I began to understand some anagram messages from Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan. And I studied these for, well, now it's been 15 years. Many of these seem to point to a cataclysm and secrecy, and also the fact that they themselves were not free to speak out and tell what they knew. So I spent a lot of time in these this book, and my newest book is Tipping Point for a Hollow Earth. I've spent a lot of time on these anagram messages because I really feel people aren't going to pay a whole lot of attention to my opinion about how the axis is going to shift, or anything about it. But they might pay attention to Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan if I could prove that they had really created anagram messages.
Right.
So
and in the book,
please
continue.
That's a big difference.
That's
a big difference.
I
I had not discovered any anagrams back in the 80s when I did my earlier books.
Mm-hmm. So you have started on this early, but in your book, you revisit and challenge long-held NASA interpretations of Martian poles, stuff like that. So what new data or insight led you to challenge those views more openly this time?
Well, there has been some news. There's a discovery by NASA, which was announced last summer, to the effect that they had discovered a planet shaped like a collapsed football, and a very distant planet. And it seemed to me that this really called for some interpretation, some kind of comment from someone as to what this could mean. And it just seems like it's consistent with the hollow planet theory and totally inconsistent with the solid planet model. And so that's one new thing. And then the other thing is around 2019, NASA announced that they had discovered wet rocks near the poles of Mars, or near a pole of Mars. And this seemed to contradict the idea of an ice cap, because if there were an ice cap there, you wouldn't be able to detect the wet rocks underneath of it, it seemed to me. And, it seemed to me if there were an ice cap there, the announcement would have been, yes, our spacecraft has detected the Martian ice cap, but that's not what was announced.
Right. And you mentioned there before Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan as having covertly hinted at hollow planet theories. What would you say is maybe a specific statement or works do you believe support that statement?
Well, the most significant anagram message from Carl Sagan is a name which can spell the words Earth axis shift in addition to the words field reversal. And a geomagnetic field reversal is the event which would cause the axis to shift, cause the solar wind to shift the axis. And this character's name is Stefan Alexeyevich Baruta from his novel Contact. And this particular character was a doomsday prophet, and the whole novel involves people's fear of a cataclysm, including their widespread fear of an Earth axis shift. And so it seemed to me that Sagan went out of his way to create a plot line that would back up the anagram message in this name, Stefan Alexeyevich Baruta. I mean, I could give you my one possible interpretation of the entire name.
Please do.
But the fact that those key words could be found in there should speak volumes just by itself. Did you want to hear the whole interpretation?
Yes, please.
Well, I got two interpretations. One included my name because I had sent books out on this whole topic. And so my name at the time was Ruth Ann Leedy, Leedy. There was no Y in the name, but I used the I. So Ruth Ann Leedy understands that a field reversal shall cause the Earth's axis to be shifted by the sun in the near future. And TU was the spelling of two. There was no O in the name. So the name,
right?
The word two had to be spelled TU, and the word, wait a minute, by. The word by had to be spelled BI. Pardon?
Right.
So but that particular interpretation used all the letters. Some letters, of course, had to be used more than once. Usually in an anagram, that is the case, although there are a few anagrams that are perfect. Each letter used only once, such as when Isaac Asimov created the name Hober Mallow, and then he pluralized it in his 1982 novel, Foundation's Edge. He pluralized it to Hober Mallows, which when rearranged, those letters come out to Mars Be Hollow, with each letter used exactly once. And this particular character had been a planetary head of state. So that helps to back up the fact that there's a message about a planet in there.
Right. And what do you believe is the motivation behind, let's call it, the long-standing suppression or maybe redirection of the scientific information on Hollow, Mars, and Earth?
It would have to come from the Earth's interior. There would have to be a settlement in there consisting of people who are probably somewhat different racially from the rest of us. And people who, well, in my research in the anagrams, it appears that there may be references to the Sasquatch, but it's not important whether that's correct or not. The important thing is, if they're isolated from us, they probably would be racially different, and they might have uses for us, use us for biological purposes. I've seen advertisements for a mass rescue mission by UFOs during a coming axis shift. Supposedly the space people were going to rescue humans during an axis shift. And it seemed to me that this would be a ploy, an advertisement like that would be a ploy by the inner Earth cabal, their ploy to soften us up, to make us more willing to accept their gathering us up and taking us away. Many people would interpret that to be the rapture. If a cataclysm was taking place and spaceships came and gathered people up, they would think this is the rapture. And so a lot of people would
Scientologists would celebrate
that. They would submit to being taken away by the spaceships, and then I just assumed that they would be used to create substances like interferon and blood transfusions and organ donations and all kinds of things like that. That was my interpretation of the whole motivation for the secrecy.
Right. And why do you think the motivation has sort of a bad ending? Is there a possibility that they could be taking us to a better place or something of the sort?
Um, well, um, I, I have not had any contact with them, so I can't tell exactly what
Right.
they might
Right.
have planned for us. But for one thing, I just think that there's absolutely no excuse if the continent of the northern part of Europe is going to be destroyed in an axis shift, even if there weren't a polar hole involved, just
Mhm.
the change in climate alone would be a tremendous disaster. And there's just no excuse why those people should not be given advance warning and allowed to plan to migrate to other areas that will be safe for them. There's no excuse for secrecy, because this event, if it happens, it could happen, could be triggered at any time, according to Jeremy Bloxham and David Gubbins' article in Scientific American, December 1989, the evolution of the Earth's magnetic field, in which they said the reversal of the Earth's magnetic field could be triggered by the appearance of another hot spot near Indonesia. That if the hot spot appears, that the reversal could happen immediately. And if it doesn't appear, the reversal would be expected to happen in 1,500 years. In other words, the appearance of this event is determined by factors which we cannot know ahead of time, when this hotspot is going to occur. And I have a couple
Gotcha.
other predictions for the near future. There's one from Garrett L. Verschuur in his book Cosmic Catastrophes. He thought the reversal could come as early as 2028, or
Oh, wow.
following years.
It's very close.
Yes.
How close do you think it is to be true, personally?
How close do I think the
Yeah.
the event might be?
Yeah. Right.
Uh, I haven't heard any news that would give me a clue.
Mm.
I think that the only clue might be the fact that the anagram messages from Asimov and Sagan seem to indicate that the truth should be known as soon as possible. That's what I seem to. That's the impression I got from the anagrams.
Right.
And so.
So how do you reconcile your own claims with mainstream planetary science?
Well, I think that I'm in harmony with a lot of what's being said by mainstream scientists. There was an announcement January the 20th, 2000, on CBS News, announcement to the effect that 80 million years ago there was a reversal of Earth's magnetic field in which there was a great change. The area of Washington, D.C. Experienced a great change in latitude, which means that its distance from the equator was greatly altered by the reversing of Earth's magnetic field. Well, the story was introduced with a statement that the Earth rolled. In other words, it seemed to me that Dan Rather, or whoever wrote the script, was trying very hard to avoid using the term axis shift. But by saying the Earth rolled and by saying that the latitude of a certain area was greatly altered, he was in effect saying that the pole also moved. Is that not so?
According to what you're saying, I would wager, yeah.
It seems to me that episode of CBS News could probably be reviewed by anybody, and so this shows that there is an association between the shifting of the poles and the reversing of Earth's magnetic field. And I can explain to you why I think that there is this association. I just think that the solar wind is rerouted. The solar wind's path to Earth, to the magnetic field, or to the magnetic poles, is going to be rerouted when the magnetic poles change position, and it's just that simple. And as far as proving that the solar wind is defining the axis, I think I can prove that. But the fact that this event happened in the past and there was this axis change, that really should prove it right there. And the geologist who was consulted by Jess Stern for his book on Edgar Cayce, that geologist said, in his opinion, the axis ought to be shifted as a result of a coming geomagnetic field reversal, and that would fulfill the axis shift prophecy of Edgar Cayce. I mean, of Edgar Cayce. That was, but the trouble with that prediction was the fact that the geologist chose to remain anonymous. In other words, he felt that he was going to receive some kind of blowback for saying that, and so therefore he lost credibility. But anyway, that was another indication that there's an association there between the reversing of Earth's field and the shifting of the axis.
But speaking of the past, can you tell me how reliable do you consider the early 1900s photographs of Mars to be in comparison to more recent data?
Well, the photographs of 1902 and the photographs of 1909 appear to be identical. I don't see any difference. And there was a photograph in Life Beyond the Earth which showed a protruding polar cap of some kind at the north and at the south. I don't know if you noticed that. And I have no idea what year that photograph was taken, or whether it was taken by a satellite or not. So, but taking those three photographs, the 1902, the 1909, and the one from Life Beyond the Earth, I think they agree pretty well. And so I wouldn't question the validity of the photographs themselves. You could question what possible interpretations there might be.
Right.
And then the interpretation, it was always assumed that the protruding light cap was really caused by an ice, it either was an ice cap or it was caused by an ice cap. And that was always stated as the truth, as doctrine, but really there wasn't any evidence from space missions at that time. So it was just really a guess or a cover story.
Right. And you suggest the presence of an internal sun within planets. Can you elaborate on how maybe this theory explains the polar light phenomena?
Well, the internal sun would be shining through the poles. Now, the main thing that people probably need to hear about the internal sun is that this shape, a sun surrounded by a shell of orbiting matter, this shape can be found in the sky in the form of a planetary nebula, a spheroidal planetary nebula, which has been described, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, it's H.D. Curtis in 1918 found that oblate, spheroidal, or truncated shells thinner at the equator than at the poles accounted satisfactorily for the appearance of many planetaries. And so the theorist Marshall Gardner, a hollow earth theorist, he thought that this was a precursor of a planet, this spheroidal planetary nebula. I don't know why he would have thought that, because there was no sun around which this supposed planet was revolving. So what he had found a structure that was analogous to a hollow planet, but not in any way related. Because the structure itself was much too big. The star involved was much too big to be the central star of a planet. but what the planetary nebula just proves that the hollow planet structure is viable, because this analogous structure exists in the form of the planetary nebula, but which people, of course, most people don't realize that, and that's why it seems so ridiculous to people that there should be a hole at the pole, and it did to me as well. I mean, I really had to force myself to read about the hollow Earth theory initially, because it just seemed so totally ridiculous. But if you know about the planetary nebula, it doesn't seem quite so ridiculous.
Right. And so if say if Mars is in danger of destabilizing due to its rotation and everything we've been talking about, what implications does that have for Earth's own geophysical state?
Well, Mars, the difference between Mars and Earth is that Mars no longer has north and south magnetic poles, and so the solar wind is no longer concentrated at those 2 points. Mm-hmm. And on Earth, the solar wind is concentrated by the shape of the magnetic field, concentrated at the north and south magnetic poles, and solar storms can set off changes in rotation rate. This is a sign that the solar wind is affecting the rotation rate probably all the time. But with Mars, since there are no north and south magnetic poles, the solar wind is striking uniformly on the planet and is not going to have any effect on rotation. So therefore, the forces that cause the planet to slow down, which I guess the main force would be tidal friction, mm-hmm. there's no boost from the sun to counteract that force, and so tidal friction can act on Mars to slow it down a lot faster than Earth's rotation is slowing down. Earth's rotation is probably slowing down only because the solar wind is slowly becoming less and less powerful. That's the way I look at it. But on Mars, the rotation is slowing down due to complete lack of support from the solar wind and due to tidal friction. And so when it reaches a point of being not rotating fast enough to maintain its hollow shape by centrifugal force, then it would collapse inward at the weakest point, which would be the thin equatorial regions. It would collapse in first, and you would get this collapsed football shape. And it just seems to me obvious that what NASA detected with this collapsed football planet in some far distant galaxy was a sign of what we can expect eventually from Mars. How soon, I have no idea.
You mentioned earlier the equatorial bulge. Is that discussed
yes.
in the book, related to like known climate or tectonic activities?
Oh, the equatorial bulge is what you would call a rotational effect, and so it was also the reason. Well, you noticed that the quotation given about the spheroidal planetary nebula, it was described as being oblate, and that means it's not a perfect sphere. It means it bulges at the equator, but the equatorial bulge on Earth was discovered some decades back. I'm not sure when it was, mm-hmm. but I think it might be around 25 feet. It wasn't a tremendous difference in altitude or difference in in sea level, really. But I believe that the Casey prediction for Japan reflects the change in sea level which would occur if the equatorial bulge formed near Japan, much closer to Japan than before, and so that it would be enough of a difference in sea level to swamp the majority of the country, and also parts of the west coast of the United States. and I think Hawaii would be included in that. Although I haven't found a lot of predictions for Hawaii, but
Right.
but I think Hawaii would be near the equator if the pole were in northern Europe. So
That's what I wanted to ask you too, because I want to know, in your opinion, what would a cataclysmic shift in polar openings look like? Like, are there any warning signs should we be looking for on Mars or on Earth?
okay, I think one of the warning signs would be the Arctic upheavals, and this is based on the prediction from Edgar Cayce, which to the effect that there will be upheavals in the Arctic and Antarctic, and then there will be the shifting of the poles. And the quotation goes on about changes in climate, and in other words, that the axis is going to be in a different place. And so the first sign that the axis is beginning to shift is there will be these upheavals, which the upheavals involve the edge of the polar hole, one edge being spun into the air and that dirt and rocks being deposited on the opposite edge, so that the hole migrates slowly in that way. The hole doesn't just pop up somewhere else. It migrates slowly in a process by which rocks leave one edge and are deposited on the opposite edge, slowly. And the first thing you notice is these upheavals, and then as time goes on, you realize that the axis is not the same as it was before. So that would, but the other sign that as I mentioned, that Bloxham and Gubbins have predicted that another hot spot will arise and that will kick off a reversal of Earth's field. I mean, I'm just kind of holding my breath, hoping that it doesn't happen anytime soon.
You and me both. You and me both. And if I can get a little bit philosophical with you, I want to also ask you about the role of mythologies or historical accounts of inner Earth civilization, because that piqued my interest when you talked about it. How does that play in your research or narrative?
The role of inner Earth civilization?
Right.
Well, for one thing, I would assume that the prophecies of Edgar Cayce came from somebody who was familiar with inner Earth science, because Cayce's prophecies were delivered, I guess, around the early part of the 20th century. They were delivered well before space flight, and well before we knew about the equatorial bulge. And the prophecies reflect knowledge that was advanced, things that we've discovered since, but that we didn't know at the time the prophecies were delivered. And so the source of the prophecies had to come from some society that, like in the interior, that would have known what's going to happen. And the fact that the voice speaking through Cayce was anonymous, never identified, to me indicates that whoever was piping these messages to Cayce did not want the ruling forces of inner Earth society to know who his or her identity. In other words, the Cayce prophecies would be, I would see them as an attempt to subvert the plans of the rulers, an attempt to rescue us, or enable us to save ourselves from the evil designs of the ruling class in the interior.
Right. And in your view, how does concealing planetary truths affect how humanity prepares for its future? How do you see that happen?
Well, I would see that if if the true facts are revealed publicly, I would imagine that especially the countries, the leaders of Europe, but also the leaders of Russia, particularly, and Japan, would have a conference as to how the people of Europe and Japan could be resettled. And Russia is a prime candidate for offering refuge for these people, because many areas of eastern Russia, which are sparsely settled today, will enjoy a much more favorable climate. And it was predicted by Casey that Russia will be seen as the hope of the world, and I just interpreted that to mean that those people who are in distress and living in a dangerous area that's going to be destroyed are going to be able to go to Russia if they have time enough in advance to make their escape.
What is next for you personally? Are there any other planetary bodies or phenomena that you're maybe trying to explore in your future books, something like that?
Any other phenomena?
Right, that you might be exploring in future books.
Well, you never know what you're going to discover.
Right.
I guess I would like to just keep reading, and it's hard to work on a project like this all by oneself, because especially something of great importance, you want to be able to confer with other people, and I would love to have a panel of geologists and astronomers to help me with this.
I mean, that proposes actually a good question. I want to ask you this one last. Are you collaborating with any scientists, researchers, historians, anything of the sort to further validate or maybe publish your findings in a formal capacity? Let's call it that.
I send out newsletters to various organizations, and if anyone wants to collaborate with me, they're welcome to answer my mail. I mean, or contact me some way or another. And I guess I've had a little bit of help. I've had one or two people that helped me to contribute to my newsletters, but I haven't had the kind of help that really made a big difference. Every now and then somebody will agree with me that the Mars photos of August 4th, 1969 show light on the night side of Mars, and that helps me.
Right.
But generally, these people don't want to have their names mentioned.
Right, attached to it.
They don't want to be mentioned in connection with anything so seemingly ridiculous as the hollow planet theory, but not only because it seems ridiculous, but because there's a possibility of retribution if indeed there's a cover-up. I thought I would be killed. I thought I was going to be killed after my first few books, and then I finally concluded that since I'm so underqualified, that I'm not considered to be a real threat to the cover-up.
Well, so, I would consider that twice, but I don't wish any harm on you for any harm to happen to you. So I'm kind of, it's like sweet and sour. You want it and you don't want it at the same time. It comes with pros and cons. But Ruth, thank you so much for joining us once again and continuing to bring these thought-provoking insights to the table. Your work challenges us to think beyond the conventional narratives and examine the deeper truths that may lie beneath our feet, forgive the pun there, or maybe far above our skies to our listeners. I mean, I want to say to you, if you're interested in this polar hole, Light in Europe's Clouds is now available wherever books are sold. You can find it. And with that being said, until next time, keep asking questions, stay curious, and read bravely. Ruth, any closing words?
Well, I appreciate all your questions, and I hope your listeners have felt the benefits. I mean, I felt I benefited from this conversation. Thank you.
I did too. All right. Well, thank you very much. I have been yours truly, Winston, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you, Winston. Bye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the BrightWord Books Podcast, home of the literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss future episodes. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.